Hey guys, it's me, Inktivate, that one Minecraft channel you forgot about. I think it's safe to say that 2017 was a very good year for gaming. So many amazing games came out this year, and most of them I haven't actually played. I did play a lot of other games though. Look at all these. First up, Shovel Boy. Alright, so I finally got around to playing this after it launched with the switcheroo, and oh boy, now I know what all the clamor was about. This game just oozes charm, from the amazing retro graphics, to the quirky characters, to the stellar soundtrack. They nailed the old school feel so well, I somehow felt nostalgic playing it, as if I had played this game as a kid or something. None of it's gonna blow your head off or anything, but the platforming is so well designed. Each of the 8 dungeons has its own unique theme and completely different set of challenges. Difficulty is hard enough to be rewarding, but never too frustrating thanks to the frequent checkpoints, and cherry on the cake, there's endless replay value, thanks to a bunch of different secret collectibles and a wide variety of magic powers that you can change up each time you play. Maybe you want to play with the sword swipe and the blopper boo, and then the next time you want to play with the phazon and the crammer. You know, whatever you feel like you can do. It's pretty great. The DLC's pretty good too. They are just kind of rehashes of the original with spiced up controls and a different story, but like they're different enough that it's definitely worth trying them. Spectre Knight has a swoopy glide thing that's kind of OP but also really fun. Plague Knight is this complicated, slow, jumping, also fast bomber dude that honestly it's really hard to control. But after I played it for a few hours, I really started to get the hang of it, and it was extremely satisfying to play. I give it a snake out of 10. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the Wii U, for the switcheroo, not for the Wii, we hate the Wii. You know when someone online says that they've played like 3 billion hours of some game that's not even good, and like you just get mad at them? Like, why would they do that to themselves? What's wrong with them? Anyway, that's much easier to understand when you kind of have that game of your own. Yep, Mario Kart is that game for me. I do not know what it is, but the game is just woven into my DNA fingers. There's like a billion different courses, twice as much as the normal Mario Kart game, which only had 500 million, I guess. Nintendo actually added a battle mode, thank goodness. Mario Kart 8 is overrated, no battle mode. How could you do this to us, Nintendo? Mastering the drift, zooming around corners super tight, getting that extra boost, nailing those new shortcuts you found, screwing over your friends, of course, the absolute godlike music. Listen to the saxophone solo, listen. Oh my god. No. Anyway, if you're looking to pick this up, basically with this game, your first few hours is gonna be how much you enjoyed the game forever. So if you play the first few hours and you're like, that was alright, that's how you're gonna feel about it forever. And if you're like me and you play it for the first few hours and you're like, this is the best thing ever, then it's just infinite, dude. Infinite happiness, right here. No bamboozles. I did not expect to like this game so much. This entire game was made by one dude. Can you believe that? I don't think I've ever played a game quite like Cave Story. You're this little amnesia robot dude who wakes up in a cave and it doesn't tell you how to do anything. You just gotta explore and figure out what to do, which is the best thing ever for me. Eventually you'll run into a guy who gives you a gun so you can shoot the dudes, and you can make your way out of the cave. You'll run into this interesting open village with a race called the Mamiga, which are sort of these bunny people that are apparently being captured and exploited by an evil doctor. And there's this big scheme, and oh man, you just gotta play it, dude. There's so many lovable characters and unique moments. It's got the perfect mix of story elements, solid platforming, and exciting combat. All the different environments are so interesting. Each one is kind of like their own little Metroidvania. You'll be backtracking and trying to figure out what to do a lot, which is totally my style. I think my favorite part was collecting all the little doggos from my grandma. Here you go, grandma. Boss fights, oh my gosh, boss fights are nuts. You're gonna die a lot, but you're eventually gonna beat it if you've got it in you, and you'll feel awesome for it. Probably the most interesting thing about this game, though, is that there's multiple endings. It's not very intuitive, so you'll probably need to look up what to do after you play through the game once. There's a sad ending, a good ending, and the real great ending. If you just play through the game blind, which is what I did, you're going to get the first one first, which is what everyone recommended, and then look up the weirdly specific thing to do to get to the next two, and you can play through the game again. And honestly, it's even better the second time because you know what you're doing. And there's also a bunch of secrets to find, some secret weapons, secret people, secrets. Satan out of 10. Yep. Metroid Samus Return of Samus Part 2. Guys, this game is awesome. Simply put, this game is Metroid at its core, and there's nothing else quite like it. Right off the bat, you're by yourself on this isolated planet to eradicate the entire Metroid species because they're deemed too dangerous to keep living on. This rather dark premise helps set up the theme for the whole game. Right as you get out of your gunship, the atmosphere is immediately chilling, and that unique Metroid sense of isolation sets in. It's all up to you, and you have no idea what to expect from this planet. Though the entire game is technically chopped up into like 7 or 8 different main areas, those main areas are sort of little Metroid levels of their own. Each one has a sprawling design which is intended to get you to explore and discover things on your own. The combat is awesome, and dare I say, the best that 2D Metroid has ever been. Although this is actually my first 2D Metroid, so I'm probably not one to judge something like that. Regardless, it is immensely satisfying, especially with the new insta-counter feature, where if you press X right as an enemy is about to hit you, you'll do this little swipe move that'll render the enemy completely defenseless, and then you can take it out with one shot. And if that sounds OP, then you're kind of right, because it kind of is. After the first half of the game, and I really got the timing down, and instead of directly engaging enemies, I would just wait for them to attack me, insta-counter, and kill them in one hit, because I don't want to waste like 6 missiles trying to kill this one guy. So it was a little bit too OP in that regard, but there actually are some enemies that cannot be insta-countered later, which definitely shook things up. I hadn't really been practicing any other strategies up until that point, so that was definitely a good shake-up. 360-degree aiming is perfect, a very needed evolution for 2D Metroid, I feel like. The music is great, a lot of it is recycled from previous Metroid games, but I feel like that's okay. It gets some nostalgia points, if you know what I mean. It could use a little work on enemy variety. There's basically the same like 5 or 6 kinds of enemies with various reskins in later levels. Especially towards the end, I got really tired of seeing the same enemies over and over. And I think this game, it could get a lot better if there was more variety. So despite some of the Metroid boss fights being a little bit repetitive, the other boss fights are so pumped full of adrenaline, some of the best boss fights I have ever experienced in a video game. It makes me so excited for Metroid Prime 4, because if that gets the same treatment in terms of boss fights, then it's over, dude. Wave Beam out of 10. Princess of the Twilight in high definition. It's weird to admit it, but this is actually the first Zelda game I've beaten in my 10 plus years of gaming. I played about a third of Ocarina and 2/3 of Spirit Tracks, but I never stuck it out for either of them, at least yet. Throwback to January of 2017, following the best trailer for a game ever made in the history of game trailers. Holy crap, dude. I decided to pick up some other Zeldas. That way, my unquenchable hype could feast upon something until Breath of the Wild came out in March. I played Twilight Princess first, and it was really good. I can already tell I'm more of a fan of the darker-ish tone of Zeldas, so this was right up my alley. Despite a few low points in the game, the obnoxiously long and tedious intro sequence, the character models bordering on the uncanny valley sometimes, it has more than enough strengths to redeem itself as a wonderful game. Right from the start, you can tell it's gloomy and eerie and different, but not in like a muddy and uninteresting way, rather in a mysterious and strangely beautiful way. The premise and consequences of this game feel more real and kind of hold more weight than ever. There's so many standout moments in this game, it's sure to leave a significant impression on you. That sequence where you rescue your friends from the bokoblins racing on the horse, holy butts. Midna doing this? Bruh. It really amped up the combat options too, probably in response to Wind Waker's press B until they die easy mode. It caught me off guard how much I had to think for some of these enemies. There's a plethora of special and interesting attacks that exploit different weak points on different enemies. You'll feel like a real swordmaster by the end of the game. Also, you're a wolf now. Yeah, so the wolf gameplay itself isn't all that interesting, but I think the very fact that you turn into a wolf, like the realm that you enter is so mysterious and supernatural that it causes you to turn into a beast, I think the fact that that happens is pretty cool in and of itself. I just wish they could have done something more interesting with the actual gameplay other than, like, it just takes away abilities and you're just a wolf who can run and attack. It's less to do, but it's still pretty cool. Oh man, I really like the dungeons. It's everything you should expect from a Zelda game. New and unique item used in clever and ingenious ways throughout the dungeon, non-linearity and sprawling nature, for the most part, and an incredible variety of color, theme, and, bosses. I was really at the edge of my seat for some of these bosses. They're really memorable. I think my favorite dungeon of them all was the Icy Mansion. It took me a really long time to figure out, but not like in a frustrating way. Like, I was fully engaged and finding new paths, solving puzzles, beating up dudes the whole time. And once it all clicks together and you figure out those last few things, it's just awesome. And the boss following it wasn't great, but hey, you win some, you lose some. I have heard it described by some people as sort of like an edgy, watered-down version of Ocarina of Time, but I haven't finished Ocarina yet, so who am I to judge? Hey, if this is watered-down Ocarina, I can't freaking wait to play Ocarina. At the end of the day, Twilight Princess is a top-tier experience that, despite showing its age in a few areas, it's definitely worth your time. I give it a Cthulhu out of 10. Wow, look at the time. Here's some good games that didn't quite make my top 10. Fire Emblem Awakening. So after realizing I spent $250 just to play one game, what is wrong with me? I decided it would be a good idea to pick up some other 3DS games to get my money's worth. I played Ike and Lucina in Smash Bros at the time, so I thought, hey, maybe I should try Fire Emblem so I can feel worthy enough to play these characters. Awakening was like the second best rated 3DS game out of them all, so I thought, hey, that would probably be a good one to start with. I played it all the way through, and it was pretty good. I'm not a big RPG fan, so it did take me a while to warm up to the gameplay and the overall style, but after I did, it was pretty fun, and I can safely say I like Fire Emblem now. The story was pretty meh at times, but really good at other times. Especially those cutscenes I really enjoyed. Apparently, despite its high critical praise, a lot of hardcore Fire Emblem fans put this game towards the bottom of their tier list, so I'm definitely interested to try out some of the other games sometime later. Snipper dips. I couldn't help but think, like, this is just like the perfect game to play with your girlfriend. If she likes it and you two end up having fun, laughing at each other, working together, solving puzzles, hey, she's the one. And if you end up yelling at each other and arguing about things and throwing controllers, then dump her. If she starts making weird noises like meh and nyeh, she's probably a whale. I think is that illegal? I don't know. Thumpa! Do you feel like your life is too boring and easy and you want some stress and panic and dread in your life? Then play Thumper. It's insanely difficult and fast-paced and will be sure to send your heartbeat to a deadly high rate. You may also have an existential crisis because of the crazy trip that is this game. Why do drugs when you can just play Thumper? I think I have schizophrenia now. Thank you, Thumper. Also, shoutouts to all the multiplayer games that kept me coming back time and time again because of their endless, friendly fun. Alright, moving on to the top 5. Mario Odyssey is fantastic and one of the best experiences of this year, hands down. However, it's hard for me to talk about it without first mentioning that I was a little disappointed with it personally. See, I'm an enormous Sunshine fan. I played this non-stop as a kid, and honestly, none of the other 3D Marios have really come close to the absolute joy I felt and still feel while playing Sunshine, even to this day. When Nintendo said that Odyssey would be continuing off of the style of 64 and Sunshine, I was beyond hyped. Finally, a return to the 3D Mario style I fell in love with originally. And though it did return to the sandbox style, there were actually a lot of design choices that made it still pretty different of an experience than 64 and Sunshine. No hub world was the biggest one. This makes such a big impact on my experience. A hub world makes it feel like I'm exploring an actual world and discovering things for myself, rather than just level select all over again. It kills the immersion for me. Also, despite the areas being sandboxes, your actual goals and the progression of the game was quite linear. Also, and this is my last gripe, I promise, the moons felt kind of meaningless to me because there were so many of them that I just became numb to it after a while. And I could talk a lot more about this, but I think I'm gonna save it for another video. And despite all of this, I have somehow put 50 hours into this game and nearly 100%ed it. Could it be that I'm actually having fun with it? There's almost nothing bad I can say about this game other than my personal gripes with its direction. The minute I accept the direction that it took, this game is wonderful. If 3D platformers are at all of interest to you, this game is an absolute must-buy. The music alone is going to put a smile on your face right away. All the kingdoms are so varied and creative and full of color, each jam-packed with new capture abilities to keep you on your toes and keep things interesting. Mario's movement is probably the best that 3D Mario has ever been. Seriously, sometimes I'll even turn on this game just to do random parkour because it's just that satisfying. On top of how well Mario controls, he's probably the most mobile than ever. And once you figure out that hat dive jump thing, like the whole game's just gonna be a freaking breeze, dude. The story itself isn't really anything special, even for a Mario game, but it's very charming and fun for what it is. And I love all the little cutscenes that we get. This game has truly got something for everyone. And if you're getting a Switch, you would be a freaking Tootsie Roll for not picking Odyssey up. Don't be a Tootsie Roll, dude. So, after Metroid Prime 4 was announced at E3, here's my reaction.
What? Oh my god! What?
I thought to myself, man, this is so hype. I gotta play through the Prime trilogy already. I went onto the web and whoa, Metroid Prime is the highest rated GameCube game of them all? How have I not played this yet? So I picked it up, and after playing it, I can tell you it's #1 on the list for good reason. It's absolutely crazy that a game of this caliber and fidelity came out in 2002. This game is 15 years old, look at it. Honestly, the intro sequence, like the first 30 minutes of this game, is one of the most standout moments of all of it. It's gonna knock you on your butt right from the start. You've received a distress signal from an unidentified spacecraft above a planet called Talon 4. You land on the outskirts on your gunship. What happened here? Why is it so quiet and eerie? You walk inside and... oh man, what happened here? There's fire everywhere, giant dead... what are bugs? What are those? Dead bodies? Oh yeah, you can scan anything or nothing depending on your playstyle and how much you want to know. Turns out this is a space pirate ship. If you know any Metroid lore, these are the bad guys. You make your way through the frigate, learning more and more disturbing information about what's been going on here. Genetic mutation? Phazon? Unstable life forms? Oh no, is something going wrong? Finally, you make your way to the center of the ship, and... you engage in this epic battle with this crazy music, and it's so nuts, and oh no! The whole ship's falling down. Escape sequence. There's a time limit. What? How can a game be this exciting in the first 30 minutes? You tear your way back through the vessel and make it out back to your ship just in time. Then, Ridley. We need to follow him and investigate. I barely knew anything about Metroid when starting this game, so I was like, oh, it's a dragon. Well, I guess we're following it now? Why are we doing this? Who am I? What? So everything can be a little confusing if you don't know a bit of Metroid lore, but this whole sequence is such a banger that it's hard not to love it. You chase down Ridley to Talon 4, and you land in a quiet and rainy area, ripe for exploring. And you get to experience a much quieter and slow-paced adventure for quite a while. So the intro doesn't really fit the next 6 hours of the game until the next boss fight, but it does really well to set up intrigue and really get your blood flowing. Explore winding paths and interesting areas, discover all your lost abilities to open up even more new paths, research and discover the strange events that happen to this dying planet, and fight bosses to help restore order to the planet, and get even more abilities to explore more areas. The atmosphere here is really unparalleled, and I loved it from start to finish. You've got water, you got fire, you got ice, and you got, other things. The control scheme is a little weird on the little old GameCube controller. It takes a bit to get used to, but after I got the hang of it, it fit perfectly, and I don't want anything else other than like actual dual stick analog, I guess. I'm not going to spoil too much, but the last third of the game is so jam-packed full of action and new visors, and a bunch of bad stuff happens, and it just gets crazier than you ever could think. It's just a fantastic game, and it's definitely worth your time. So this game is an interesting case. I'll be the first to tell you that if a game has me shooting a real gun and killing humans, I probably won't enjoy it very much. So the fact that this game is number 3 on my list should speak for itself. This game is a masterpiece, and it's all due to its storytelling. I don't think I've ever felt so invested and moved by a story in a game before. You see the zombie infection happen firsthand, as well as all the tragedies that come right away. It's heart-wrenching, and the presentation of it all is so seamless and well acted. Sometimes I forget I'm not watching a movie, I'm actually playing a game. That's not to say that the game is overloaded with cutscenes though. A lot of the story elements are actually told through the gameplay while you're walking around and seeing things for yourself. The combat is actually really interesting and engaging. You're always being tugged between stealth and action. While stealth requires more planning and thinking, and sometimes it doesn't work right, you'll save ammo and health, which you're always very short on, so it's precious to keep. It's more survival horror than shoot 'em up, but if you do get caught while trying to sneak around, it can very quickly turn into a shoot 'em up. Just when I think I've got this game figured out, like, oh, I know it's gonna happen now, it throws a huge curveball and everything changes within the story. Okay, we made it past those guys, so now we're probably gonna go. Whoa! Oh no! What?
Joel!
I'm alright! I'll make my way up to you!
Yeah, this part was like the scariest thing ever in a game, dude. It was dark, waist deep in water. I don't know anything about what's down here. Zombies are screaming in the distance in unknown locations. I don't know where they are, and I gotta find my way out. I don't know if Ellie is okay or if she's gonna die too somehow. I gotta get out of here. Finally, the zombies find you and you get chased by the big, blubbery dudes that rip you apart if they get to you. I don't know how I survived through this game in real life. And then right as I was about to get tired of the Joel gameplay, bam, several months pass, and now I get to play as Ellie in the snow in a completely different scenario, as well as gameplay shakeups. There's just really nothing like this experience. It would be higher on my list, but the fact remains that it's still not really my genre. I've had more raw gameplay fun in a lot of the other titles in this top 5, but the whole presentation and storyline of this game really outdoes itself and really stuck with me. So that's why it's number 3 on my list. I can't wait for part 2. I'm buying that day 1, dude. Alright, the second game in the trilogy. I actually had this one as a kid, but it was a little too difficult and scary for me then. I got to the part with the first Ing boss, promptly was killed, and was greeted with this death cutscene. Yikes. Yeah, that almost made me cry, so I had to turn it off. A few years later, I got stuck on the Boost Guardian, and that was about it. But now, today, I was older and more competent. I was playing through this trilogy, and nothing could stop me. Remember my criticisms of Prime 1? This game quite literally fixes all of them. It even fixed things that didn't even bother me in Prime 1, but now that they're better in this game, it's hard to go back. When you're scanning, instead of having weird reticles that are like sticky noted onto objects, this game turns every scannable object into a color-coded hologram, which is much more intuitive and decipherable. There's more focus on the story in this game, and it goes into a bit more detail about what happened here and why you're actually doing what you're doing. The overworld loops around on itself and is much more connected than Prime 1, making the backtracking work much better. This was quite literally the perfect Metroid game for me. So the intro sequence isn't as action-packed as Prime 1, but it has just as much energy in terms of suspense, mystery, and dread. Yeah. I feel like this introduction fits the rest of the game much better than Prime 1's intro fit that game. You learn of what horrors happen to your Federation comrades. This is personal now. You make your way further and you're sent off on a mission by the last Luminoth of the species, desperate for someone to save their planet from this Ing species. And it's not just that. There's also someone else lurking in the shadows. Nothing beats this survival horror kind of gameplay for me. I love how something can be so freaking scary without relying on what I would say are horror tropes, which are basically all just deformed humans. There are no humans in this game. It's just aliens. Hooray! There's so much mystery surrounding the Ing and Dark Samus and Phazon and the Space Pirates, the Luminoth. Your adventure is so eventful, things start to make sense. I love it. Oh man, going into the Dark World for the first time was haunting. I was so afraid to even move once I got in there. The very atmosphere around you is toxic. You can restore health by walking inside these little light bubbles. One of my favorite things to do is to charge up the dark beam, freeze an enemy, and explode them with a missile. Even though the light beam is more effective in the Dark World, that little combo is definitely really effective. Torvus Bog probably has my favorite music of all of the Metroid series. Though there might not be as much color variety as the first game, I would argue there's just as much elemental and thematic variety. The first area, Agon Wastes, used to be a lush grassland, but is now a desolate wasteland of sand and earth, crawling with dangerous worms and bugs. Torvus Bog is a dangerous swampland, cursed under constant torrential downpour, with powerful enemies on the ground and in the water. Then it totally mixes everything up and it's Techno City, the headquarters of the Luminoth. All their old technology designed to protect them is now corrupted by the power of the Ing, and you get to take down robotic enemies instead of natural ones. This game is longer and harder and darker than Prime 1, and in my opinion is that much better of a game. Easily in my top 5 of all time. Give this game a shot. Alright, this is it. My favorite game of the year is Zelda Breath of the Wild. I just couldn't give this number 1 spot to any other game. This game just blew everything else out of the water for me. I can't believe how magical of an experience I had with this game. It's one of the few games that I can just pick up and it makes me feel like a kid all over again. I'm so glad Nintendo has taken Zelda in this open world direction, because it's quite literally the perfect fit for Zelda. It took us 30 years to get back to our real roots. While previous Zelda games are top-tier episodic experiences, this is the first one I've played that really feels like a true adventure. There's just enough setup after you first set foot on the Great Plateau. The old man will give you just as much guidance as you want, and you're on your way to tackle this game however you see fit. That feeling, you can do this any way you like, and there's so many different options. That feeling of having an absolute mammoth of a world at your fingertips, knowing nothing about what else you're going to discover in this interesting world. It's just unparalleled. Wherever you go, there's enemies to fight and ingredients to collect. You need to take your survival into your own hands. Combat is loads of fun, and I love how there's so many different clever options to take down enemies without a head-on fight. Magnesis a crate onto them, push a boulder onto them, stasis a rock into them, steal all their weapons so they get thrown off a cliff. Sneak attack, anger some bees. I had so much fun with the combat that I didn't even realize that there wasn't much enemy variety until I watched some reviews. Yeah, there's pretty much just bokoblins, big boy bokoblins and fast boy bokoblins. But I feel like all the different scenarios that can occur when you're fighting these guys really make up for those flaws. Shrines are great, and they serve a lot of very important purposes in this game. They're a landmark and a point of interest to keep you exploring and engaged with the world around you outside of the main quest. They also give you a puzzly break from the adventure and combat up on the overworld just to keep things fresh. Also, once you beat it, you get a spirit orb that allows you to upgrade either your health or your stamina so you can get stronger. Even if they are a little short, the divine beasts, which you find later, definitely make up for that. So the story compared to previous Zeldas, I admit, isn't all that impressive, but I'd argue that it doesn't need to be, and it's totally competent. The focus of this game is just different from previous titles, and it doesn't need a fantastic standout story. Kind of like Mario Odyssey barely has a story at all, but it's hard to argue that's a legitimate criticism of the game because that's just not what the game's about. It's not the focus, and you can kind of apply the same thing to Breath of the Wild. The focus is on the adventure, the world, and your journey, not necessarily the story. Besides, it's hard to make a story that's super compelling just with the nature of an open world game, where things can be found in any order. But there's something else. You can find memories of what happened during your past, and I feel like this makes up for a lot of it. It is frustrating for a lot of people that a majority of the good story takes place in the past, but I feel like that's just the theme of this game. During those cutscenes, I love Zelda's character. It really humanizes her and makes us relate to her, and I'm glad she's not just this fully confident, all-powerful magic person anymore. You know, she's a kid, and she has her own struggles and mistakes, and there's a clear character arc with her, especially with her relationship to Link. It's the first time I've seen this sort of depth in a Zelda game, and I hope this kind of storytelling returns. Although it would be nice for it to happen during the game and not in memories. The 4 different champions are all really memorable, and each have their own unique relationship to Link. And at the end of it all, tragedy, death, failure. A game hasn't had this much of a dark premise since Majora's Mask, I feel like. It really sets the stage for the feel of this game. All the time while you're exploring this world, it's beautiful, but after learning about all the horrors that occurred before, the peaceful quiet of the landscapes and the soundtracks aren't just peaceful anymore, it's sad and forlorn. You and Zelda and the champions failed everyone so many years ago, and now you're dealing with the consequences. But there's still hope. You get to redeem yourself now. The game doesn't make these themes obvious to you, and I think that's to its credit. If you want all that backstory and lore, you can seek it out and find it for yourself. I think that dynamic really makes this game special. As far as I'm concerned, this Zelda has just as much depth and story as any other title, but the presentation is definitely way different, and there's just more focus on the adventure itself, so take that how you will. So, Divine Beasts. These are really cool. I love the sequences where you took down the beasts and got into them. Other than the Goron one, that one was a little meh, but the rest I really liked. Once you get in, it's something like a traditional Zelda dungeon, but a little bit shorter, and they all kind of look the same. There's no like thematic variety, which I did kind of miss. But other than that, I felt like the actual puzzles themselves inside of the Divine Beasts were really well designed and felt like actually logical instead of using, the weird game logic. I didn't feel the need to look up a single thing to complete any of these beasts. And that's not because they were easy, it's because they made sense. Eventide Island, I love that challenge, and it's probably my favorite location in the game now. Labyrinths. What? Yes, labyrinths. A secret fishing village that isn't even required. Oh, the climbing. I haven't even mentioned the climbing yet. Climbing is amazing. Hyrule Castle? Oh man, best part about the game. It was one of the few areas that really felt like a traditional winding Zelda dungeon, and it was just awesome to walk in there with my super beefed up Link and just take everyone down. It was amazing. I do have to comment on the final boss and ending. It was really, really cool and very cinematic, and I loved the first half. It was just a little bit too easy, and there's a lot of things about the second half of the battle that definitely could have been better. Also, the ending was just not satisfying enough, in my opinion. Like, I was really expecting something more, which I admit kind of let me down, and it really makes me want, like, a post-game, which I thought the Champion's Ballad was going to be. But I feel like this game is more about the journey than the final destination. And thinking back to basically everything about this game except for the ending is just amazing. And it's not like the ending was bad. It was competent and really good at some points. I could go on and on about this game. For Nintendo's first effort into the open world genre, they just knocked it out of the park. I feel like they totally redefined the genre. I will admit that this game has its fair share of flaws, probably more flaws than the other games on my top 5, but despite that, like, just the childlike wonder I felt during my first playthrough of this game was like nothing else, and I have to put this game at number 1. Honestly, all the shortcomings that people keep clamoring about with this game only make me more excited for Zelda as a whole, because they've made it clear that this is the new norm for Zelda games, and they're already working on the next one, so like, they're probably gonna fix a lot of the gripes people had. At least I hope. Maybe they'll even bring back traditional dungeons, or a story that takes place more in the present. Who knows? We have a lot to look forward to. There you go. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of the year. Hooray! I am so happy with 2017. Definitely one of the best years for gaming in a long time. There's still so many games I haven't got to yet as well. You'll probably be seeing those in future videos once I get around to them. I really want to play Cuphead, Horizon, Nier Automata, or however you pronounce it, and so many others. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I appreciate you watching till the end, and I'll see you guys later.